it's like you take on the shame of the other people that they're projecting upon you. Hey, what's shaking? Welcome back to All In, the amazing podcast with your host, Rick Jordan. That's me. And today, I've got a writer, recording artist, poet, sometimes dancer, which is kind of interesting, model, and host creator of the Who and How Club podcast, Arys Dejan. Welcome to the show, my man.
Woo. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What was that,
Rick?
man? Woo! I dig that. Yeah.
That's a little tag, you know?
I like it, brother. I like it a lot. Yeah, I was about to read some more into that, but you've had a lot of life challenges, my man, like not knowing who your biological father is growing up, right? In foster care and being abused.
Yeah. I mean, not knowing who my father is pretty much, imagine just like not knowing a piece of you, like where you come from. Like, it's just like a total question mark, And it kind of plays into like the Who and How Club theme, because if you look at the logo, a lot of people don't know what the logo represents, but it's actually two question marks joined together.
Oh, that's cool.
Who and how, right? And
yeah, I can see that now. That's awesome.
Yeah. So throughout my life, there are many question marks, and not knowing who my biological father is has been one of those question marks.
Yeah,
and a running theme.
I really want to dive into that because I'm sure it's a thing that there's a lot of people in the country and the world kind of grapple with, Yeah. But first, the Who and How Club, that's not your only gig, right? What else do you do?
So that's it's a creation of mine that I brought to life. Outside of like my artistic endeavors, I am in the social services field. So I work, I have like a quote unquote 9 to 5, but I look at everything as art. So I manage a homeless shelter in the city of Toronto. So I've always been involved in the social services field. So that's my full time, so to speak. And then on the other side of things, I do my podcast. I'm in music and recording and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm always into the arts somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, dude, is there any correlation, do you think, between what you're doing in social services and growing up not knowing who your father was?
100%. Because, growing up in foster care, from ages 13 to 18, I had a lot of social workers, and the workers would, change very often, and it's like you always have to restart in telling your story to like this new individual that's being introduced to you. And I always said to myself, like, I want to grow up. And I don't think the workers that would come into my life very so often would understand how much that would affect me. Like, oh, I just built a relationship with somebody and now they're gone, they're on vacation, or they've gotten a new position. Now I got to reintroduce myself to this new individual. And it would affect me a lot. But I always said that I didn't want to do that to somebody else. Like I wanted to get into the field and not do that to somebody else, another young person, you know what I mean? Because I knew how it felt. So I wanted that consistency, and I wanted to be consistent in somebody else's life. So I always said I wanted to get in the field in somehow, some way. And through that experience, I ended up just, working my way up and getting into the field. Because
that's incredible.
It, yeah.
And you said the social work you're in is in homelessness right now, or homeless prevention.
In the homeless sector. Yeah. I used to work with youth, and then I got into the homeless sector, working with families, then, single men and women, and, newcomers to the country, stuff like that. So, yeah.
It's interesting how you're talking about, the ability of those individuals, and in essence, I guess, a social worker can kind of be a mentor, at least for a season in someone's life. And I was in social services, if you want to call it that, for a little while, but it was just where my pay was funneled through in this project I was on. And I saw, in my experience, that because I wasn't actually doing the social service work, I was on the back end tech side, gathering data, building databases in order to gain bigger grants from the federal government. That was what I was doing, So I was like the revenue producer in that essence, using tech. But when I saw a lot of these individuals who were in social services, the actual caseworkers, you saw completely two different sides of the spectrum in a lot of people. You saw those individuals that were very much like you, that had somebody that impacted their lives, that went through some crap themselves. And that's why they were in this, because they really wanted to help each other. But then way on the other side of the spectrum were those that were just as disgruntled and depressed as people that were walking in the door for help. And I never understood why they wanted to subject themselves to that type of thing. Because think about it, I'm sure you saw this, man, because if you're homeless, for the most part, you're probably not in a good state of mind. There's probably some depression that's going on.
Rick, you just took the word out of my mouth. Out of my brain. I was going to say it's a depressing field to be in. It's hard to manage your own mental health when you're dealing with so many personalities on a daily basis. And these personalities are very unique. They're not your everyday personalities, people who require your support in some form or fashion, right? And, they themselves are dealing with some mental health issues and they're on the spectrum. They don't even know how to identify their issues. And these are people who are older than me. They could be my uncle or my dad, let's say, right? Or my mom or whatever. So, you forget how to deal with your own personality at the end of the day, because it's like, I just dealt with like 100 people. Who am I? Who am I after dealing with all of that? Like, you think you have issues? What the issues you think you have are not, or you can't compare them. You know what I mean? So it is a depressing field, so to speak. You see a lot, you get exposed to a lot. But taking care of yourself at the end of the day is a focus that needs to be present when you're in this field. But so a lot of people forget that. And that's why you see a lot of people who are burnt out in the field, because they forget to take care of themselves,
Yeah. There's a lot of service industries that are that way too, because, I've defined, even the avatar in my industry in cybersecurity, at least when it comes to corporate IT support. Because I was in that role too, and obviously it's not anything to compare to homelessness or a social worker, but it's still kind of the same mentality in the respect that these are individuals that are dealing with people's problems all day long. So that they both can be very, very depressing fields. When you're going through that, and I guess almost any service industry where you're dealing with people that are walking in your door that have issues. I mean, think about, I don't know, a customer service rep with T-Mobile. I'm sure all the phone calls that they receive are not, hey, can you just change my plan for me? I just need to, the best ones, right? I just need to add a line, the easy sales. Oh, sure, no problem. I can help you. Versus a lot of times like, WTF, my phone's not working yesterday, the entire day, and I need money. I need a credit. I need those $3 prorated, and that's what they deal with day in and day out. How do you handle that stuff, man? When you're
dealing with people. When we're in the business of people, like even yourself, you're a complex individual when you think of yourself. So imagine being in the service industry where you're serving other beings who have their own brains, their own perspectives, their own hearts, their own uniqueness, whether it's in the homeless sector or, like you said, like in the customer service field or T-Mobile or wherever. Like, you're dealing with people, and that requires a certain amount of finesse and skill in order to deal with another human being.
That's an understatement, man.
Look at relationships, and you're dealing with another person. We forget about that. Like, it's a weird concept to grasp,
It is. Even when you're working with, let's say, I got a speeding ticket for the first time in like 20 years, just a couple of weeks ago, right? And I'm telling the guy, the cop, as he pulls up and he's like, dude, I clocked you doing 87 and the speed limit's like 60. I'm like, I was in Utah and I'm going down this hill. And the mountain just literally got away from me because my mind was on other things, and I'm sitting there. I'm talking to him, I'm like leaning in the side window, and I'm like, man, I'm really so sorry, And I swear, I have not had a speeding ticket since I was 16 years old. And of course, then they look at you, it's like, well, I'm just going to go check that out, And
they brush it off.
I know, right? But then I'm just thinking about this from their perspective too. Because there should be respect for authority, but still, even being a cop, man, is like a people business. It's the same thing, and should there be justice reform? Yeah. And, we're not going down the political route, but still, even in that, it's still a people business. That's probably one of the biggest people businesses that exists.
Exactly.
And he was a nice guy, even though I directly asked him to finish all my story. I'm like, dude, can you just let me off with a warning? Because
did you get the ticket or no?
I got the ticket. I got the ticket.
My God. It's funny, Rick, a very similar situation happened to me like a few months back. And Thankfully I got away with a warning because I had never been stopped for speeding, and the limit was 40, and I was going like 50. And he still stopped me. He was actually like posted on the corner of where I work. So I was just turning into work and he caught me and he's like, you give them that story and they probably hear that the story.
Oh, of course they do.
Yeah. 100 times a day.
Yep.
So they're not trying to hear it. But if only they knew this is the first time I'm being stopped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they kind of, they've heard it all. They've seen it all, so.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, man. I'm sure that's how he was thinking. But back to the people business side of stuff. I mean, that's really what all this is. So when you're dealing with social worker, I'm hearing like some clicking in the background.
I was just about to say, Rick, listen, my dog, he's like he knows when I'm recording.
Does he really?
Because he does this every time. Prior to this,
so he's drinking water. She's drinking water. Yeah. What?
No, I put him in his crate in his room just to chill out for a little. But he does this every time. But prior to this, he was quiet, it's like he knows I'm working. Like, it's ridiculous. I wanted to ask you because we were talking about depression. Can you share a time in your life where maybe you were depressed or you faced some sort of depression?
Yeah, man. It was, I think 6 years ago now, almost 6 years ago when I started going through this health battle. And it was something that was very legitimate. The end of the story was that I had a gangrenous gallbladder. I mean, like dead, black, necrotic, that was sucking life out of me because this was dead. But 8 months I went through, and this comes back to like the people, but I've never talked about it from this aspect. Actually, this is cool because I've told the story before, but the people business side of this, I went through 8 months of doctor to doctor with them not being able to figure out what was wrong with me, and then just dishing it off to anxiety and depression. And at first, I'll say it was not that at all, because I'm like, there's something physically wrong with me. I know it is. I'm listening to my body, and then they kept throwing this anxiety and depression stuff at me. And I'm like, I don't feel like my body doesn't feel the way it feels because of how I'm mentally focused right now or mentally just blown out of my mind, which is what they were pretty much telling me. I mean, doing MRIs to my brain and everything. I'm like, it's the reverse, I'm feeling the way I do because of whatever's going on in my body.
Yes.
And they couldn't grasp that for several months until there was like this shift because, dude, it was, and this has to do probably even with social workers and everything else, because it was like opinion after opinion, doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist of hearing the same depressing thing. It's like, oh, well, everything looks fine, so it must be in your head. Yeah, and you start to, when you're in that kind of environment, constantly, and just this oppressive environment, you start to believe this stuff that people are telling you. And even though I never was that way, so then there was this point to where I did cross over to where now, yeah, man, I was clinically depressed. I had issues with anxiety. I'd wake up in the middle of every single night with the room spinning, thinking that I'm just going to die right then because I didn't know what was going on. Until finally that environment thing that I'm talking about, I removed myself from everything and I went to Florida. And dude, removing myself from all that oppressive environment of the doctor's visits and them telling me that there was something fucked up in my head. And that's the reason why things were happening the way that they were, is it was all right up here.
Yes.
Which was stupid. It was bullshit.
Yeah.
But finally, when I removed myself from that environment and just took a minute to breathe, is when I actually could feel the pain right here. So it's almost like because of this environment that I was in that I became numb, like desensitized because of people and that lack of people service from the doctors that I was seeing. And some of them, they were pretty genuine, but what are they going to do? It's like they only tunnel visioned, and that can happen in caseworkers too, right? In social work, they can tunnel vision and only see maybe one tiny symptom of what's going on in that individual's life.
Yes.
And they don't look at the big picture. And when you create that environment for somebody, you're doing them a disservice. I know what happened to me, man, and that's how I ended up getting depressed. But it was when I removed myself from that oppressive environment. Took 2 weeks to like sunny Florida in the middle of December is when I was finally able to clear my head and actually think, oh man, and literally feel the pain. The first time I literally felt the pain. It's like, it's right there, guys. Look right here.
Yes. Now I wanted to add, because I feel like you just speaking with you, you would agree with something like this. You know how powerful the mind is.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like there was some sort of truth to what they were saying about it being all in the head? Because I do feel like we do psych ourselves out and might get sucked into these rabbit holes with our minds, like our mind has a mind of its own. And if we don't control it, then it'll control us at some points. Like I could say I'm guilty of that. You know what I mean? A lot of my depression came from my thoughts and my worries and stuff like that. So did you at one point feel that there might have been some truth to the mind and how you were thinking of everything and might have brought you down?
You bet. Yeah. I mean, there was no doubt physically that I was close to death. I mean, even when the surgeon pulled it out, it was a 45-minute standard surgery that turned into 3 hours by hand. So it was, and he was saying that, within another day, I would have just been gone. So there was legitimate physical stuff that was going on, but a lot of the stuff that was going on with me was going through this process, and it was my mind. I know it was that was attracting this. And, I could even maybe argue that because you hear of people that heal themselves from cancer with their mindset, right? And the mind's so super powerful, man. And individuals, let's even talk about COVID. There's individuals that I've talked with that have had just a depressing outlook on their prognosis.
Yes,
and they end up having one of the more serious cases. But then there's those who are like, there was an investor actually who just invested in my company that caught it. And I was having dinner with him and he was saying, you know what, I went through this and I started saying, it was like, COVID is my friend. COVID is my friend. And I'm like, dude, that sounds a little nuts. And he goes, but look at what happened, man. He's like, I ended up having a closer relationship with my son because my son took care of me for a couple of days. I ended up just being able to pause my life because what am I going to do? And literally just take a breath in those moments and just appreciate life for what it was. So I just kept saying COVID is my friend. And this is a guy that was slightly overweight. He was probably in the higher risk category because he was around 60 years old. But then he ended up bouncing back from it in like 48 hours and going skiing again the next week. And this was in Vancouver, BC. And it was just amazing to hear how his mindset affected the severity of his illness. At least he thought that was the case. So yes, to answer,
it's different for everyone, especially look at the people who just haven't been able to work, right?
Yeah,
we can only imagine what their depression is like right now or how this thing has affected them. Like it's easy for some of us to speak about it and say, oh, we've changed our mind frame around this because for some of us, a lot of things haven't really changed. But for the majority, people's lives have changed drastically. So they're on the downhill. No matter how much they try to change their frame of mind around it, it's like they're not, there was someone who posted something on my Instagram today. He was someone that I went to school with. And he went on Instagram Live to express just how this thing is really affecting him, not being able to go outside. And, he cried online he's like a call out for help. You know what I mean? We can't imagine what other folks are going through. I think you and I are fine, but other folks there, they can't leave the house. They can't spend any money. They can't live their lives. They can't work. As much as people hate their jobs, working keeps them going, keeps them stimulated and stuff like that. So imagine just being stuck in the house.
Dude, it's horrible. Or being stuck on a street when you were working with homelessness,
Oh my God.
And what's the common, I mean, I'm hearing a commonality in everything that we're talking about, which is environment.
Yes.
And that's a big key, I believe anyways, as far as how it affects your mental state. So you were abused, right? Do you mind sharing exactly the type of abuse and what that environment was like around you?
Yeah. I mean, during the foster care days, there were, I've never really spoken about this outwardly, but actually prior to foster care day, I call it foster care days. I was molested as a kid, by an older woman. And, when you're in those moments, you don't think about like, oh, this is nothing. I'm a big boy because the bigger girl is like, she's toying with me. She's playing with me. Sorry about that. Hold on. Relax. I'm talking to the dog. Shh.
No,
It's
you're
giving
good,
me anxiety.
dude.
So, yeah.
The environment.
Sorry
Oh,
about
man.
that. Yeah, the environment. He's like, he hears me talking about this stuff, is probably giving him anxiety. So anyway, yeah, I was, when you're a kid messing with an older woman and you're toying around and stuff like that, you think like, oh, I'm a big boy, like this is a good thing. But in the future, you don't realize how much that might affect you. It might affect how you deal with other women, how you view the relationships that you're in. And then even during foster care days, someone who I was looking up to at a point in time, touched me inappropriately and took advantage of me. You know what I mean? And I never really shared it on any type of platform or out loud for many, many years. So I don't know if, I don't know what those effects have had on me per se. I don't know if it's affected how I look at relationships or how I've dealt with my relationships. I don't know if I know that it has affected the way I look at other men. You know what I mean? I don't really have many guy friends, and that's because there's a lack of trust there, I guess, because of that situation. During my teenage years, I keep a lot of women around me. I trust women more than men. So maybe that's just me acknowledging what that might have.
Well, women are great, dude. Men can be dicks, right?
Well, there's a thing with men, right? There's this power struggle. There's this ego. There's this competition, even when it's unspoken. You could feel the energy. It's so thick. You could slice it in the air, like you slice it with a knife. So I don't ever feel like there's that with me and women, because I was raised by women, like I said, like without having a father or father figure per se. Being raised by women, that's all I know. So I just kept a lot of women around me during like the teenage years. And even now I get along with them more. So I got 2 younger sisters, so yeah. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, that's interesting, man, because it's
cool. Yeah.
It's almost kind of like shaped your environment now from what it sounds. But in some ways,
maybe even in the field that I'm in, actually, I didn't think of that, because in this field, you don't find a lot of men in this field. And if there are men, they're in a different a different section, like you said, in the tech side, or like, in the background, so to speak. But a lot of frontline, there aren't a lot of men in this field. This is like a women-driven field. Yeah. So I don't know if that plays a part too, but hey.
Well, you could just be a very emotionally connected dude, and I'm the same way. And, from what I found
You're in tune.
Yeah, you got it, man. And women are, at least what I've found, are generally more empathetic, and compassionate, because that's the gifts, right? That's even the difference. It's not like a man can't be, because I'm extremely compassionate, but you and I, like I said, we're like connected dudes. And
yes. Yeah.
And
most men are raised to be the opposite, right?
Yeah. So, strength, brawn, all of that, but there's also strength and compassion. There's strength and
control,
empathy.
power.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure.
And toxicity.
Yeah.
For the most part. Yeah.
It's fun walking into a room with all like testosterone jacked men, and then they see you and it's like everybody wants to be around you, but just because you're actually able to open yourself and connect with other people more. Well, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a man or a woman in the room.
Or a woman.
It just, you're able to actually listen.
Be vulnerable.
Yeah, right on. And that's a strength too, man. Vulnerability is a huge strength, even in your line of work, because I saw your bullet points, and I saw everything on your bio sheet, and I started highlighting the stuff that I wanted to talk about. And this is because this is the real stuff, man. It's great. I've got a podcast, I've got a cybersecurity company going public, but when we start to get vulnerable like this is where we actually make true connection. And where people that are listening to us, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's on stage, whether it's even just a one-on-one over a cup of coffee at a Starbucks, dude, this is where the connections are formed. And we can share these stories because, it's hard to, but anybody that's ever listening to this right now, if you can just understand that people connect when you're vulnerable, and you can't expect, if you've had troubles in your life, you can't expect other people to try to reach in and like claw themselves open or claw you open to get their way into your heart. You've got to expose that yourself. And it's a tough first step, man. It's a really tough first step, because I've been emotionally abused, in my childhood. I've been, just sexually shamed even when I was 16 years old. And it was difficult for a little while just to even talk about that because of just that, it's like you take on the shame of the other people that they're projecting upon you.
Mm.
And it's hard to form that connection in that moment. You said
I like that one. It's very true. It's true. You're walking with someone else's burden, really. Like if you think about it's hard not to victimize yourself through those situations, but you do. But then in retrospect, it's like I never wanted to give up. That was my goal in life. Like from when I was going through what I was going through, I said, I'm never going to give up. And if people tell you about Arys, they'll say the same thing. He never gives up. He won't stop. Like I might take a pause. I might take a little break, go into my little cave and reflect and take some time to myself. But I come back 10 times harder with whatever it is, like my podcast, it went through 2 different stages before it became what it is today. And sometimes that's like life, you evolve, you shed skin, you shed a couple layers, and then you become this thing that you've always wanted to become, like how for you, what did, what kept you going through those struggles and stuff like that you were going through or that you've been through
in those moments? And I only realize it now is that, because at the same time, my dad died when I was 16, but I had a younger brother and sister, 5 and 6 years younger than me. So it was almost like this instinctual. This was like the guy thing, right? The protector.
Suck it up.
Exactly. Yeah. Just kicked in and like, okay, I got to control the situation, but I've got other people that I'm responsible for. Now at this point, and I even felt responsible for my mom in those moments too, because she wasn't in her right mind. She just lost the love of her life in essence, and just was not there emotionally for my younger brother and sister for those years. I was 16, so I was already matured emotionally past a certain point, but a 10 and 11-year-old dude, that's a different story. So I had to be there emotionally available for them in those moments. So even to this day, because of that, we of course are siblings, but we never really had that real sibling type relationship, because of the age difference and because of the trauma that existed at that point in life. So it's, we've all got our junk, right? We've all got our traumas. But now
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, dude. But there had to be even with you, there had to be like a shift at some point because you were abused, right? Also had, you never knew who your do you know now who your biological father is?
No picture, no nothing, no name, no nothing. And I'm mixed, right? I'm of mixed race or whatever. So, I was raised by the quote unquote black side of my family, and the other side is unknown. And you were saying something about, your siblings, like my siblings and I also split up. They were in their own care and their own foster home or whatever. So I can relate to not being able to have that relationship that I always wanted to with my younger sisters at the time, and we're connected today, my mother's in our lives. But I don't know. It just never, I don't know. The shift is still happening. This conversation is a part of that shift, being able to speak freely about this. And you had mentioned like people just speaking, that's how you learn from one another. And hopefully like smart people learn from their own mistakes, but wiser people learn from the mistakes of others. So if we're not sharing,
that was beautiful.
If we're not sharing information, sharing our experiences, speaking freely or being vulnerable, then how will we ever learn, So we need to have forums like these and conversations, and just, that's what the Who and How Club represents, just talking to people and strangers and getting to know, what makes you you? Like, how did you become the who that you are today? Like, who are you? Can you answer that? Rick, can you answer who you are?
Dude, that's such a deep question too, because it's, the who you are is so different than even the what that you do, and when you ask it, what do you do, or when you usually get the question, who are you? It's like, well, I do this, so for me,
you
it's
define
like,
yourself by what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I'm just a dude. I always start that when somebody asks me the question, who you are, right? And I'm like, I'm just a dude who loves to bring truth into this world. And that's straight up who I am.
Yes.
And everything else stems from that, because everything about what I do, not who I am, can stem from exactly that. I'm just a dude who brings truth into this world, because that comes to cybersecurity, that comes to the podcast, the conversations that we have right now when I speak from stages, dude, the movies that I produce, it's literally everything comes from that. So yeah, I can answer the question, but you're right. It's like, it almost becomes, when you get that question, sometimes a lot of people will just go through bullet points of like a resume or accomplishments,
Yeah. Or their name even, like your name, you're not your name. Like, you do what you do because of who you are, but who you are is not what you do.
Yeah, right on, man.
Do you get what I mean? Like, it's not like that resume thing, like you're saying, like how do we define ourselves? How do we look at ourselves? Are we defining ourselves based off of what we do? Are we defining ourselves based on how the world says, or looks at us? Like, it's a question it's never ending, probably, like we're still figuring that out. We'll never know who we are until maybe we're not here anymore. I don't know.
That could be.
You know what I mean?
Well, this got deep. Yeah. On that note, dude, what's going through everything that you have? What's one thing that you think that you cannot live without?
Music, man, music.
You're a recording artist, yeah.
Yeah. I was just reading something last night. I'm working on some new music, obviously, but like I read something last night that stated that I think in Native culture, like dancing is a form of prayer. You know what I mean? It's a form of prayer to dance and to listen and to just, you don't even need music. You create your own music with your voice and stuff like that. But to dance is prayer or whatever. The way music has just helped me throughout my life. And I truly believe that music has saved me, just not only from creating my own, but just music in general, and being able to dance and express yourself through music. When you hear a song and it's like, yeah, that's my life right there. Like your sound, like I'll put my iPod on shuffle every day because it's like my soundtrack, and it always adapts to my feeling of the day. Like today's Tuesday, let's see what the playlist, what the soundtrack is for today, and it'll be that. So music is important, I feel, and I could never live without that.
That's awesome, man. What state of mind do you get into when you listen to music?
It depends on who I'm listening to, obviously, and what song, but
or whether you're listening to it with somebody. I'm sure.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I love my old school R&B and stuff like that, like Aaliyah and Genuine, Missy Elliott, stuff like that. And that's, for me, that's when music was actually good, especially in the hip hop realm. Nowadays, the music, you can't really connect to it, like no one's really saying much. And that's my goal with my music, to bring that storytelling aspect back and to share the depth and get into some real deep stuff. But in my mind, I'll visualize like things, whether if it's a love song or there's a girl in the car with me and we're riding and, just playing the beats together and just vibing. It's a vibe, like music just sets that tone. You don't even have to speak. You just listen. So, yeah.
Right on. You can listen and be. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool, brother.
What about
me?
I was going to ask, yeah. Tell me, like, what, do you look at what you do as art?
For sure it is. Yeah. And it's, when you get into cybersecurity, that's the reason it is art to me, is because I don't necessarily focus on the technical side. It's completely the human side. It's the people side.
Yeah.
So when you look at it as an art, it's like, everything behind any hack that exists is an actual human being. There's a purpose that's generated by people behind the tech every single time. And that motivation can be money. That motivation can just be, just for the thrill of it. Those are the hacktivists. So it's, those are called threat actors in this industry, but all the threat actors, they're freaking people, man, or even if it's like a government or something like that. Yeah. It's people are always behind everything. And that's this great thing that we have called life, because people are always behind every single thing that we do. Look at music, of course you've got like AI that's generating music now too. I don't know if you've heard any of that stuff, man, but it's weird.
It is weird.
Some of it's okay, but still, even the AI has to learn. And who does the AI learn from? People.
Exactly.
People feed it the data points, right? So,
well, they're saying some fields of work are going to be replaced by, by the robots and stuff like that. But, it's like, I thank God that I'm in a field where people are still necessary to do the job, because a robot can't connect with people on that in-depth level or to help them with their real concerns or the issues that they're going through on a day-to-day basis. So I thank God I chose this field. Like when you look back at your life and you're like, oh, this decision spiraled into this where I'm at today, I'm like, thank you. But
could you imagine social services getting replaced like the kiosks at McDonald's or something like that?
I think of like iRobot or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Or like you choose what your issues are today on the screen at McDonald's. Feeling depressed.
Yeah,
all right, exactly. And then you get a receipt of it of like what to do now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's a weird time that we're in.
For sure, dude. With everything you've gone through in your life, for someone who, because there's a lot, dude, who have gone through similar circumstances, what advice would you give to them?
I would say, do not define yourself based on what other people say, think, or view you as. You're an individual for a reason. And if you start defining yourself based on what other people say, whether good or positive, the positive stuff that people say about you or think about you are great, but you're not living for them anyway. You're not living to be accepted by others. You're living to shape yourself, to form and mold yourself into this being that is living. And, I believe that this is a shell. So you got to really work on your internal stuff first, your spirit, your heart, your mind, your soul, whatever, and focus on that. Don't focus on what other people think of you, say about you, or view you as, because they're not the ones, paying your bills. They're not the ones sleeping with you at night. They're not the ones feeding you or putting food in your fridge. It's you that you have to worry about and think about, what kind of version of yourself that you want to be in this life. So I would say focus on that. I would say, just be yourself. Be yourself. And be happy with yourself, accept who you are and run with that and work on becoming a greater version of that self that you know and are learning to love, and don't stop doing that. Never stop. Just never stop.
Yeah, brother. You were talking about the shift too, and even like this conversation was the shift.
Yes.
Because you move into different seasons. How have your priorities changed over time?
God, this guy. Love your questions. I'll be honest with you, Rick. There was a time where I wasn't a priority.
You mean yourself, right?
Correct.
Yourself. Yeah.
I wasn't a priority at all. Everything else around me was a priority. Everybody else, girls, work, money, everything. Just I didn't know how to focus on myself. But now that shift that you and I are talking about and referring to, that I understand now what it means to just be by myself and to focus and work on me, on Arys, whoever Arys is, whoever Arys wants to be. Like that's my duty. That's no one else's duty. I can't depend on anybody else to shape me. I used to think that being in a relationship all the time was the thing, and that's going to help me be. No, I need to just be with me. So, my focus and that shift is a representation of what just self-growth is supposed to look like, and self-love, self-care. These terms are kind of corny nowadays because we see it being used in so many different forms and online, on Instagram, whatever. But it's just the truth. Like, you got to focus on you. You got to work on you. How can you be good for someone else if you're not good to yourself? How can you trust anyone else if you don't trust you? Imagine not trusting yourself. I don't trust myself enough to do this or to make this decision, but you'll trust another being to make the decision for you. It's weird. It's weird.
It is weird, isn't it, man? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about you.
Yeah, it has to be, because I was using the example. It was just the other day about talking about a glass of water, like this right here, and it wasn't like the half empty, half full thing, but it was more. It's like if because this is like there's half in here right now. See, I didn't even say either half empty or half full. There's half in this cup right now.
Just half. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I give this away, dude, Yeah, if I give this away, I'm giving from a position of scarcity. It's like, here, have a drink, here, have a drink. But if I'm not constantly filling this up, the cool thing is that when you constantly fill it up, it's like the overflow of this spills on to everything else around it. And that's how that's in a position of abundance that you have to come at other people with but first, it just that you have to fill yourself up first. If you got to do for yourself, that's the only way you're going to overflow into other people.
Yes. Yes.
That moment, dude, when you realize that you're the one, because there is like a realization, right? How can people seize that moment or even come to that realization themselves?
Well, you gotta take some time to reflect, because 9 times out of 10, it's being shown to you in many different ways. You're just not embracing it or accepting it because there's a fear aspect, right? You don't want to be alone. Who wants to be alone? Who wants to not be around people or have some sort of abundance of love from another individual and but there are so many signs being shown to you that, like, what you need to do right now is work on you. This relationship you're in, these friendships, your family ships, like, you don't need to be surrounded by all. It's like what's the word? It's gratuitous, like it's just too much of all of that. But the too much is the you that you need. You need a lot of you. So when you start to see those signs, the advice I would give is to embrace it and make those changes. If it means that you got to cut off some people, separate yourself from the herd, take a break, stop partying every weekend, separate yourself from the unhealthy things. Like, you'll start to see a shift in yourself and in your life. A lot of people, they're friends with people because they went to school with them, like from grade 3 and onward. So these are my friends forever. But what if that same friend is like a bad friend? Are you telling me you're not going to cut them off just because they've been in your life for so long? Like, take that step, make some room for new friends. Like, you can't, like, you got to make those adjustments. And I think the universe sends you those signs in many ways. We just choose to turn a blind eye to them. You know what I mean?
It's almost like rain, right? I see rain. There's drops. If truth is rain, right? And I'm visualizing this. I'm seeing this in my head right now too, man. Because if truth is rain,
I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna visualize it.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, everybody who's listening, we'll end with this today because this is cool. Yeah. Visualize that rain around you, because that rain, every bit around you is like truth. You can't fricking avoid it. Yeah, it's getting you wet. It's right there, and it's literally soaking you. But it's almost like walking through, and that maybe we're back to that control. They're like, well, I'm not wet. This rain really isn't that wet.
Yeah, this ain't wet.
It's like, that's not truth. But man, I mean, you're right. The universe, whatever your source is, always shows you all around you. And that's what it is. It's like, just I guess the only way you can avoid it is just not standing out in the rain.
Jeez.
The rain's still there. You can still see the rain through the window from whatever house you're hiding in.
Yes. It's still there. That's why you got to embrace it. Yeah. Just run out in the rain. Just run out.
I love it, dude, because your bio says sometimes dancer, but dude, dancing in a nice warm rain is kind of fun. I'm just going to say it. Dude, I think back when I was a kid, dude. When I was a kid, it was like it's like, well, it's raining. Who cares? I'm going to play out in the rain.
Just play out in the rain.
Yeah. Man. Oh man, that's awesome, because I didn't care. I didn't care.
I feel we need to get back to not caring, man. Who cares who's watching? Who cares who's watching? Climb a tree. Doesn't matter how old you are. Like, just run, just dance, just feel, just be present, embrace it.
I love it, brother Arys. Thank you so much for being on, my man. This has been amazing and super deep, and thanks for opening up, dude.
Appreciate it, brother.
What's shaking? Thank you for joining me on the All In Podcast. Click the subscribe button and smash that bell for notifications. Text me, 312-535-8520. Follow me on social media at Mr. Rick Jordan. See you next episode. I am Rick Jordan, and I approve this message.